faces here, and the little short about me is that I'm a Christian, I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I was a small business owner for about 20 years, and in 2007 I got registered to be an EMT, but I ended up taking a side path doing political activism. And I've been doing it full time ever since, so for about 7 years. And the big catalyst issues for me was government surveillance. And I guess what you could loosely call privacy issues, although sometimes I'm referred to as a privacy advocate, and I think that's just not really exactly right. Unless you think of it like this, and this is how I think about it. I am an activist for protecting personal liberty. And privacy is very valuable and protective of personal liberty. I've got a quote here. It's a book you've probably never seen. I'm going to try not to use that. That's making all kinds of popping noises. I found this book in a secondhand store, and it's a fellow by the name of Wolfgang Sofsky. He's a German guy. And the Germans really think profoundly about privacy issues. But so this whole little book is Privacy Manifesto, and the whole book is about why privacy is important and what it really protects. Because when you say the word privacy, I don't know about you guys, but I think bubble bath. You know, I want my privacy. So a quote from his book that I think I can accept being called a privacy advocate if you think of it like this. Wolfgang Sofsky says, defense of privacy is the first step towards rescuing freedom. Privacy limits power's claim to be omnipresent. And I agree with that. The limits of privacy is the limits of the political. So where your privacy ends is where the politics and the regulation begins. And so privacy is a buffer zone for us. And what I'm going to talk to you guys about tonight is the issue that I've focused on for at least 6 of the last 7 years, and that's mandatory biometric ID. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm trying to do to stop it and what you can do to help and why it's really bad. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. I'm also a member of an organization called the Constitutional Alliance, and I'm going to just kind of give you guys a real brief, broad view of what's going on with biometric ID. If you want to know more details, you want to go to Axiom for Liberty. That's my website. It's Axiom with 2 X's, 4 F-O-R, liberty.com, or the Constitutional Alliance. It's constitutionalalliance.org. And you can find my lawsuit there. If you want to read the details about my lawsuit and what have you, you can find all of that information there. So freedom is defined by the ability of people to live without government interference. That's what it is. But biometric ID allows the government to insert itself into the center of our lives, into every aspect of our lives. And we are in a period of time right now, for the first time, that we have both the political will and the technology to identify, track, and control every single person on Earth. We've never before we've always had people who've wanted to do that, but the technology and the political will have never come before together to allow that. So we're in a sort of precarious time. And so what we're talking about is biometrics. And biometrics just means measurement of the body, fingerprints, iris scans, digital photo, DNA. These are all examples of biometrics that's used to identify people. Identification usually is based on something you have and perhaps something you know. So like an ATM card and a PIN number would be something you have and something you know. But after 9/11, on a mass scale, we have implemented biometrics as ID, which is something you are. So we've introduced the body into the identification process. And this is a big thing, and there was not much discussion about it. And so with biometrics, your body literally is your ID. And that's really personal, real up close and personal. So what is happening in the broadest sense and the most accurate sense is that we are all, everyone in the world, and us in the United States, are being enrolled into a single global system of identification and financial control. That is the fact. That is what's happening. Biometrics as ID is what allows government surveillance and monitoring to become extremely specific and personal to the individual. It also makes the surveillance inescapable, and we've never been in quite this situation before. It's my position that biometrics for identification should not be used on ordinary people. If you are not a criminal or a suspect, you haven't done anything wrong, you shouldn't, we kind of get this with DNA. We sort of have a tendency to be opposed to DNA unless someone has been convicted, because we realize that that's a huge invasion of privacy. But biometrics, all of this surveillance, whether you're talking about smart meters, whether you're talking about surveillance on the internet, so data surveillance, whether you're talking about CCTV cameras, which is real obvious, any kind of surveillance and monitoring that you can think of, biometrics will be combined with it to bring it right back to your body. It's the linchpin of the modern surveillance state. So this is why I'm really, really opposed to it. I think that we have a duty, every one of us, to preserve freedom for the next generation. I think it's a literal duty. And this is part of the reason that I filed a lawsuit against the state of Oklahoma, because of the requirement to provide my biometric identification in order to get a driver's license or a state ID card. It's my contention that this is a violation of my religious freedom, my right to freely believe and practice my faith, as well as a violation of my right to be free from unwarranted searches and seizures. Both of these are protected by Oklahoma law. Probably everybody in this room is here or politically involved because you feel like the balance of power is being disrupted, and we fear the government getting too much power and control. And you could talk about the balance of power with people being in charge, the consent of the government, all power emanates from the people. You could really boil that down to two things: the level of transparency and opacity between the government and the people. And what I mean by that, in the United States, our ideal is to have personal freedom set very high and government control very low. And that has allowed us a number of things that allows us to be self-actualizing, self-determination in life, economic prosperity, political and civic involvement, and a lot of other things, prosperity for everyone. And so that balance of power with the people in charge depends on the window to the government being very transparent so that we can oversee what our government is doing, and the window into our lives remaining somewhat opaque, have a little bit of a privacy screen. As you may have noticed, this has been inverted. Okay, so we have government acting in secret with opacity while our lives are an open book. You've got your home being invaded by smart meters. Everything is about national security and surveillance, and that is a dangerous situation to be in. A friend of mine, Mark Lerner, wrote an article a few days ago about the chilling effect, and he made the statement that never before has it been possible, or has it happened, that we've had a surveillance society and a free society side by side. It doesn't happen. And we live in a surveillance society now. And so when we have the transparency, opacity balance shifted, what we see is individual citizens being intimidated. They're inhibited from participating socially and especially politically. Innovation is stifled. So much relies on us having a little bit of a privacy screen. And prosperity it exists for a chosen few that are in with the power structure. Okay? So why do we need biometric ID, or why does the government think that we need biometric ID? Governments and corporations on a quest for perfect identity. And biometrics as ID is just the first step towards connecting the body or fusing the body with our legal identities. They're wanting to get our bodies and our legal identities as close as possible. And biometrics serves to bridge that gap. Your legal identity is established usually by your birth certificate or some other foundational document. Okay, biometrics does not establish your identity. Biometrics as ID is used to establish a perfect connection between our bodies and streams of information about us. So health records, criminal records, civic records, education records, travel, finance, anything, any record that exists in a digitized form can be connected to your body through biometrics. It's also used for access control directly, so you can think of people that work for the federal government or some high-tech corporation where maybe their face or their fingers in a database, and it's scanned when they go to work, make sure that they match or they can't get in. But it's also used indirectly to control our access to places, services, and goods in both the physical world, so as far as where you go, what you buy, but also in the virtual world. They're working on the virtual world would be logical access, so access to information, access to computing services, or anything that is internet related. The government has been working since 2010 on, and one of the models that they're using is our biometric driver's license, that we have to use that to log on to get access to anything on the internet. So they want to know who we are at all times. They want 24/7 digital footprint. Biometrics are used to identify and classify people and to socially sort them. It's also used for screening and surveillance, and including, when we're talking about surveillance is real-time surveillance. So not just your digital breadcrumb trail, but also where exactly you are at any point in time, and that's done by what they call remote biometrics. A good example would be facial recognition, where any camera, whether it's on a drone or a pole, or the police officer's mobile handheld unit, they're using iPhones to take your picture and run it through the database. But so with remote biometric ID, like facial recognition, you can actually be tracked and investigated at a distance without your knowledge or consent. It's also used for data mining and predictive analytics, and I'm just going to, I'll pass this around if you guys want to see it. This is from a FBI slide. And these actually show people at a political event and facial recognition being used on them. So there's no anonymity in public. And they list some of the reasons that they want to use facial recognition: for access control, for screening, to identify you, for law enforcement, national security, and identity intelligence to understand intent. How in the world does facial recognition allow them to understand your intent? Well, they're talking about using data mining, which, like I said, your biometric is used to connect to all this information about you, which they process through an algorithm and assign you like a threat level. Anna would be like a 5 on a scale from 1 to 5, because she's, I think she's a Ron Paul person. She's politically active. She's obviously the biggest threat to national security there is. But that's how it works. Or predictive analytics, where they take all this information about you and their little algorithm says you're more or less likely to be a threat. So that's what they're talking about there. You're welcome to pass it around. Really cool for an activist. I'm a real researcher, and I found this PowerPoint from the FBI. I think it was dated 2010 or 2011, and I managed to scream loud enough about it that it ended up, you're going to love this, in Al Franken's hands on the Senate floor, grilling the FBI. You're not going to use it for political events? I believe that's a Hillary Clinton deal. You know, that slide was blown up that big. I had to take a screenshot of it. I'm like, look, my slide. It's on CNN. It's awesome. So it's a pretty mind-blowing slide, though. This is what they want it for. So one of the things that's going on, and I will not bore you with the details, but the U.S. government and all governments, but the U.S. government is ensuring that all databases, including biometric databases, and especially biometric databases, can share information across systems. So from the local all the way up to the global level, they can be interoperable, they can share information, they're speaking the same language. Kind of reminds me of the Tower of Babel. Okay, Tower of Babel, all languages are standardized, basically. So another thing that's concerning about biometric ID is how it's used to transform rights into privileges. And when I went and read the UN Charter on Human Rights, when you read international documents, that's often referred to, and it sounds really great on the surface. I mean, we've got rights in that charter. We got a right to health care, and we got a right to the government taking care of us and all these things. But when you really read it and analyze it, They're not rights at all. They're privileges that are granted to the people by the government, which means that they can be taken away at any time by the government. And so biometric ID is being used in such a way that transforms our rights into privileges. And we know the difference between a right and a privilege, because with a right that's granted to us by God, that no man can take away, we don't have to ask anybody's permission to exercise a right. If we have to ask permission to do something, then it is a privilege. And so one example that I can give you is the Immigration Reform Bill, the most recent one. What that bill would do, been passed by the Senate and it's been hashed out in the House, is it would require every person in the United States, which at least 95% of us are citizens. There's a small number of people that are here and they're not documented. And so what this system, what they're proposing with this bill, and this seems to be something that the Democrats and the Republicans tend to like, that they agree on with immigration reform, is that every person that wishes to work to earn a living would have to have a biometric ID and submit that ID and those biometrics to the federal government for permission to work. You would not be permitted to take a job until you were cleared and approved by the federal government, and this would be based on your biometrics. If it's not a right for us to use our talents and our skills and our strength and our bodies and our minds to earn a living, to feed ourselves and our families, then I don't know what is. It would be a privilege under this immigration reform bill, and that's just one example. In today's digitally networked world, biometric identification enables individual identification and investigation, tracking, surveillance, and control. That's the fact of it. This is why I have a big problem with it. So let's talk a little bit about facial recognition, because chances are you have been enrolled via your facial biometrics. How it works is high-resolution digital cameras capture, map, digitize into numerical values your facial features, puts it in a database. It's combined with your biographical data, and the purpose of it is to be used with facial recognition technology. Facial biometrics was chosen at the international level to be government's biometric of choice. It's not the most accurate biometric, but it has the advantage of being taken from us without our cooperation or even knowledge or consent, and it can be used to identify us from a distance without us even knowing that that's happened. So they don't have to mess with us. And even though it's not the most accurate biometric, the advantages of being able to do it without having to hassle, they take your fingerprint, you have to cooperate. So it's good enough for government work, is what it comes down to. If they misidentify you, it's not really a big problem to them. So this biometric, the facial biometric, was chosen at the international level to be the government's biometric choice. And so the standard for our digital image on our driver's license, our ID cards, or any government-issued photo ID is the standard set by the ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization. That's an agency of the UN. That is the global standard that our biometrics adhere to in the United States. And so by virtue of this standardization, this is why I say this is a single global system of identification. It's intended. The only purpose for international standards is global data sharing. That's what you have them for. Simple. There's just three things that nations and states have to do to create this single global system of identification and ultimately financial control, or control in general. They have to enroll their citizens using biometrics, and this is accomplished through driver's license, ID cards, passports, federal ID cards, you name it. If it's a government-issued photo ID, they're using biometrics. They have to enroll their citizens. They have to use international standards for global data sharing, and they have to link the databases. All of this has been or is being accomplished as we speak. In fact, the latest industry reports, which are the great things to read about biometrics, because you've got people whose sole job, and they get paid very well for it, is to research everything about an industry and report to that industry accurately so that that industry can move forward, make money, and make profit. And so I follow I can't afford the entire report. It costs thousands of dollars, but they'll give you a little teaser, and the information that I was looking for is in there. The industry reports say, the latest one, that by 2018, 127 countries will be issuing national EIDs. A national EID, the discerning feature for it is that it is or will be based on biometrics, whether or not there's a card. Because remember what I said, with biometrics, your body is your ID. The card isn't necessary. The document isn't necessary. They can identify you by your body. So 127 countries, and I've read, looking up how many countries, and it depends on how they define it, there's anywhere between 195 is the most common count for how many countries there are in the world. I've seen some go as high as 206, depending on how. So the vast majority is using biometrics as identification. And a recent quote from a fellow by the name of Robert Mockney from the Department of Homeland Security says that the evidence is clear. Biometrics have become the standard for identity management, not only in the United States, but worldwide. So for everyone, our body has been introduced into the process and will become more of a feature in your identification as time goes on. But it is established worldwide. China and India both have a biometric national ID. Those two countries alone are a third of the population. This count, they give actual more data on this. But in the United States, for example, biometric IDs that could be used as national IDs but haven't been officially declared, like our state driver's license, isn't even included in their numbers. And there are approximately 210 million licensed drivers in the United States. And I'm not even counting ID cards. ID cards are the same exact thing as driver's license, only same system, same enumeration, same biometrics, everything, just doesn't allow you permission to drive. So the vast majority of Americans are enrolled through the DMV. I just want to give you a little bit of information because it's important. The Real ID Act of 2005, how many people are familiar with Real ID? Heard of Real ID? It was passed in 2005 by Congress with very little debate. It was stuck into a must-pass military spending bill, tucked in there. And the interesting thing is that all throughout our history, whether Democrat or Republican, whenever the issue of a national ID has come up, it has sunk like a stone. It is not in our DNA to accept a national ID card. We associate it with tyrannical governments, and rightfully so. It allows this individual monitoring of people. But this was slipped in and it passed. And what the Real ID Act of 2005 did was impose federal guidelines on state driver's license and ID cards that use international standards. With Real ID, the driver's license and ID have to use biometrics. They're using facial recognition. It has to have a machine-readable portion. In our case, at the moment, all driver's licenses in the United States have a 2D barcode. That's machine-readable. And in some states, they have something called an enhanced driver's license. It's Real ID plus an RFID chip that holds your information that allows you to do border crossing by land and sea to Canada and Mexico. Eventually, unless they come up with something more awesome than RFID. And RFID, a lot of people confuse RFID with Real ID. And RFID is a technology, it's a little chip that can hold quite a lot of information, and when it is scanned by a reader, it spits up that information. But a lot of times it will contain biometrics, and the truth is that those two technologies together pack a real powerful punch as far as, control and lack of privacy. So under Real ID, you use biometrics, has to have machine-readable technology, databases have to be linked, and information is to be shared nationally and internationally. That's what the Real ID imposed on us. Biometrics and the machine-readable technology is really what makes the Real ID Act and its effect on our driver's license a surveillance system that we have not had before. Does that make sense? So, yeah, it allows, because the databases have to be interoperable, it allows our state-issued driver's license and ID cards to basically be turned into surveillance and tracking systems. That's a big deal, but it slipped right under our noses. Most people don't know anything about it. So, Real ID has 4 official purposes by law that you're required to have a Real ID for. Nobody ever talks about the 4th purpose. So, Real ID is to be required to access federal facilities, like Social Security office, even federal facilities that are within the state, to board a commercial aircraft, to enter a nuclear power plant, and the 4th purpose, which is the most important one of all, any other purpose that the Secretary of Homeland Security decides to add, with no congressional oversight, no statutory limitations, and you can just imagine that that's going to... Here's the Mayors Against Illegal Guns in 2009, in anticipation of the Real ID being fully enacted by 2014, suggesting that the Department of Homeland Security adds Real ID to the official purposes for guns and ammo. So that's what's going to happen once they get it fully implemented. So you'll be happy to know that there was a historic rebellion against Real ID. And over half the states passed either a law or a resolution saying, we're not doing it. And they cited privacy reasons. They cited the 10th Amendment. They cited a lot of reasons for it, and all of them I agree with. Oklahoma passed a law. It was one of 16 states that passed an actual law. It's on the book, statute. We're not participating in Real ID. Unfortunately, they have found a way around most of those state laws. And I won't go into all of that, but Real ID is comprised of about 18 different benchmarks, 39 total. And the way you know that you're Real ID compliant is when you complete all those benchmarks. So even states like Oklahoma or Louisiana that passed a law saying we're not going to participate have implemented most of the Real ID benchmarks, including the first benchmark, which is the capture and retention of your digital facial image for facial recognition purposes. So even though we went to bat for it, they're still doing it. The original enforcement date was 2008. Number one, it's a big project. It's really hard and expensive for states to complete. Number two, a lot of states rebelled. And so the enforcement date has been moved up 3 or 4 times. Well, finally, this was on December 20th, 2013. So just last year, at the end of last year, the Department of Homeland Security announced, okay, we're actually going to do this. We're going to enforce Real ID. And they announced the phased-in enforcement of it. And federal facilities and nuclear plants by this July 21st require a Real ID. Boarding aircrafts, which is one that people are really concerned about, is going to go into effect no sooner than January 2016. So, what's happening with this federal facilities? You have to have a Real ID or another government issued ID. So if you have a passport or military ID, they're all biometric. It's all the same thing, but you can get in. So I've been watching this with a lot of interest. And the first thing that I saw happen, remember I said there were 16 states that passed a law refusing to participate in Real ID? There are 10 states now that are not officially compliant with Real ID. Okay? Oklahoma is one of them. Kentucky is one of them. So the EPA is implementing all these new regulations. Activists are wanting to get involved. The EPA is holding hearings where I guess you can give public input. Not in Kentucky, in Atlanta, which kind of stunk for the people in Kentucky who were really wanting to have their say about this. The EPA says, oh, and by the way, if you don't have a Real ID, you can't come in this building. Right? And so most of the activists from Kentucky are, they don't even know what a Real ID is. What are you talking about? And so, of course, then they said, okay, we'll let you in. You need to bring another federal ID, and we'll escort you. We'll have federal officials escort you in. So this is the kind of stuff that's going on. And a large part of this, with that hanging over our head, not going to be able to fly, that gives the state governments cover to go, oh my gosh, we can't make it to where our citizens can't fly. They're going to be furious. And the citizens have amnesia and don't remember that just a few years ago they fought like crazy to stop this. Or they're tired and they all went to sleep, I don't know. And so they're using this to force these 10 states to get on board and giving them cover to do it. But what's happening is the states' governments are doing the dirty work of the federal government. And when it comes to biometric ID, global biometric ID, it is dirty work. It is dirty. So I need to, what time is it? I want to make sure I don't go way over. I'm trying to keep it.
7:40.
What time did I start? Okay, I'm going to try to wrap this up real quick. So, like I said, the stated goal is one person, one identity. Perfect ID. And biometric ID is just the first step. I mentioned before that biometrics do not establish. People think, well, we got to know you are who you are. Your legal identity is established by your birth certificate or other breeder documents. Now, here's one thing. There's a lot of things I could gripe about this, but this one really stands out to me. If you're going to sit down and create a better identification system, wouldn't you start at the foundation? How easy do you think it is to forge or steal a birth certificate? We know it's really easy, right? Everybody knows it's really easy. There's all kinds of ways to do it. You can go get a baby that's died. You can get these documents very easy. Once you have that birth certificate, they call it a breeder document because you get other ID documents with it, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump ahead of ourselves, and we're going to create this high-tech driver's license, these ID cards with machine-readable technology and biometrics, and it's a trusted credential, it's the bomb. How likely is it that it's based on fraud? Well, do you remember the 11 Russian spies that came to this country a few years ago? And it was a big sensational story because one of the women spies, one of the woman Russian spies, looked like a supermodel. Okay, so this got everybody's attention. They had legitimate biometric documents based on fraudulent birth certificates. Okay, so that's the weakest link in the chain. Why would they not have started? Why would they jump ahead? I'm not sure. I don't have the answer to that. I have my suspicions that have to do with the industry wanting to make money, that have to do with it being easier to work backwards. Because once they got us to go along with using our bodies as identification, that's the beginning of the end. So I puzzled over this for years, and I remember about 3 years ago in one of my presentations, I said, I'm going to go out on a limb here. The next step is going to be that they're going to say, the breeder documents. Statistics just came out that I found from 2011 in France. France has 6.5 million passport holders. They suspect that 500,000 to 1 million of those bona fide, biometric, RFID documents is based on fraudulent breeder documents. This is not a surprise to anybody that this is so rife for fraud. So I thought logically the next step is that they're going to have to move the biometrics to the birth certificate. In other words, when the baby comes out, the biometric, and it would be the DNA, because that's a biometric that doesn't change over your life, put that on the document. See, the whole point is to move the body and the legal identity closer together. And so I knew that was what's going to happen. It's the only, So I found a patent, the biometric birth certificate with a chip, and you put all the DNA down in there. But there's patents for all kinds of stuff. So when I was updating my research for this presentation, yes, the ICAO, the same guys that set the standards for our identity documents and our biometric information, the agency of the UN, they are just working. They have made it a work task to figure out what we're going to do about them darn breeder documents. And yeah, they think maybe a biometric might be the way to go and some sort of machine-readable technology. I tell you all this to point out that I could give you numerous examples. That what we're going to see since we accepted the body as ID is a gradual fusing of the legal identity with the body. So when they do the globally harmonized, machine-readable biometric birth certificate, and I was talking to Brian on the way up there, and I was like, thank you. This is what a thinking person thinks. Brian's like, I had a home birth. What are they going to do about that? Yeah, what are they going to do about that? There's no official there to slap that DNA on the birth certificate. About 8% of people in the United States back in 2008 had home births. The number's going up, as you can imagine. Also, all of us are born. They can't go back and be for sure, okay? Then you're going to people coming in from other countries whose country doesn't do this biometric birth certificate. That isn't going to work. So they're going to suggest the next step. And it will go on and on until the logical procession of this is to move the identification process from the documents to on or in the body. This is I've talked to agnostic, atheist technicians, and they're like, yeah, that's obviously where it's going. And then no matter who you are, well, there's probably a few people. There's a few people out there sticking chips in themselves and think it's cool. I'm not one of them. Most people do not think that that's good. We understand that that allows for so much control over an individual. And so whether you're Buddhist or Christian or atheist or what have you, most people agree that's a bad idea, put the body on or in the body. You guys are familiar with RFID chips because it's so creepy. And it was approved by the FDA in 2004 to implant into humans, and they have done it with people with Alzheimer's and things like that. Didn't really catch on. People have a sort of a visceral, like, heck no, sort of a thing to that. There's also technology that is a tattoo. It's called cell mark, and they use it on livestock. When the developers were first talking about it in 2007, they mentioned how great it would be for soldiers, in other words, humans. And it is a tattoo that the RFID is contained within the ink of the tattoo. So all of your information can be contained in this tattoo. There's probably all kinds of other technology, and there will be other technology. But the point is that the identification process is going to move to the body. So when I don't want to go really deep into it, we don't have time. Maybe you can have some insight into my religious objections to this, okay? For me to serve my conscience, and as a Christian, my God, I have to have a certain level of privacy and liberty to do that. And so this is where my conflict is. One of the wonderful things about my lawsuit, it's the only one of its kind anywhere. Any other challenges, legal challenges that have been raised on obvious grounds, Fourth Amendment, First Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Ninth Amendment. I mean, biometric ID can infringe on a person's liberty and rights in so many ways, have failed for various reasons. And one of the major reasons is lack of standing. And so I put the free from searches and seizures, which is also in the Oklahoma Constitution, in my lawsuit on principle. It doesn't mean a thing. The religious objection, my beliefs are being violated right now. I have standing. This is the only lawsuit that has a snowball's chance to do anything. And I honestly think that I'm going to prevail in this. We will find out soon because that I have a motion for summary judgment, which is a pretrial motion that says, Your Honor, here are the undisputed facts. Like, this is an international system. You know, all of these things that are undisputed. It goes before the judge, and we're saying based on these undisputed facts of the case, we think that you have enough information to rule that my rights are being violated. That should be going to before the judge within a month. It should be very soon. And I feel real good about it. If for some reason I don't prevail, then I go on to the full lawsuit. This is just a pretrial motion, so we will continue on. There's a lot of weaknesses to biometrics. I don't want to go into all of that. I kind of brought out one of them. So just to sum it all up, governments and corporations are on a quest for perfect ID. The digitalization of the human body, your body as ID, was introduced as a way to bridge the gap between the legal identity documentation and the body. There is no way to create a fraud-proof or unforgeable document. There is no secure database. Would anybody disagree with that? There's no secure database. There's not. And so the logical progression is that we're going to have the identification moved to the body. And no matter who you are, what you believe, this is going to infringe on your right to self-actualize, self-determination, and liberty in more ways than I can list. There are no longer, here's an important thing, this comes right from the biometrics industry as well. There are no longer any political or technological barriers to global biometric ID, and this is literally how it was stated. I watch all these boring webinars. The only possible obstacle is lack of public acceptance, which means that the onus is on us. It's really up to us to object. And so when I first encountered finger scan for a driver's license, I recoiled. I didn't know about the face. I didn't know they were taking my facial image. They didn't tell me. They didn't get my consent. Had I known, I would have went through the roof. I find that really offensive that they don't. Did you know that they were taking your facial biometrics? Did you know? Did anybody know? Most people don't know. And that's actually more potential for violation and tracking and control and monitoring than your finger. So I took issue with this at the beginning. If I'd have known all of it at the beginning, I probably would not have went forward with it. So here's what you do if you're concerned about this. Remembering that the only thing that can stop this is the public. There's nothing else to stop it. And so it's really important that if you oppose this, something simple like send your representatives an email and tell them, I just found out that you're collecting my biometrics through my driver's license. I didn't know that. I didn't consent to that. I object to that. Just register your disapproval. Let them know. They actually pay attention to that more than what you would think. They do. So register your disapproval. Biometrics, you're going to encounter it in your doctor's office when they want to take your picture with a webcam. You're going to encounter it in your schools in Oklahoma. They are doing hand scans, finger scans for the lunch line. You may encounter it at the hospital. They want to enroll you hand scans. And so you want to know ahead of time. You want to try to find out ahead of time if that's happening so that you're not caught off guard. Be prepared for it. And exercise your right to say no. In a lot of cases, there is no legal obligation. When I first found out about the biometrics collecting, probably back in 2005 when they scanned my finger, I was a mom. I had a business. I had a lot of things I couldn't do without a driver's license, but I seriously sat there and argued with them about it. Not everybody can go without a driver's license. You guys think about how often you have to present your driver's license? I had to restructure my life because I do not have a government-issued photo ID. It's really crazy. And so not everybody can just burn the car, right? But you can register your disapproval. You can, when you go to the doctor's office, tell them no. It's not required by law. Don't let them scan your ID. We stopped them from doing that at the Warren Theater in Norman. I about had a conniption. Well, it's expired anyways. I'm expired, by the way. Did you get that? Where were you at where they were asking for your...
Applebee's to get a beer.
Yeah, and her driver's license expired, and I told her what I always say to them is, am I expired? I'm not expired. I said, I'm fine. It's me. I'm still here. But yeah, they're requiring driver's license from one more. Don't let them scan your license. Put a sticker over it, so if they try to do that sudden scan or shock, it won't scan. Then you can stop and say, wait a minute. Is that required? If you go to Best Buy and try to return an item, they will scan your driver's license. It's required by their store policy. I recommend that you don't go to Best Buy. So tell your children that unless you have mom and dad's explicit permission, no biometrics, no finger scanning, no iris scanning. They did this in Florida. I'm so glad they did it. They took hundreds of children's iris scans, and they didn't even ask for consent or inform the parents. The parents revolted. There is no biometrics of children in Florida now. So, and if there is a mandatory policy, try to get it changed. And the other thing is support people who are fighting this like me. And I've got this guy sitting right here to monitor me and make sure that I do this. Like I was telling Anna, the thing that we're worst about is asking for help. We're very independent and we do it ourselves. I have an excellent lawyer in Oklahoma City, the best for this issue. And I also have the Rutherford Institute. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Rutherford Institute. John Whitehead is a personal hero of mine, and I'm absolutely thrilled that they're working on my case. And they're not charging me, but my lawyer in Oklahoma City has to. And frankly, he's worth every penny of it. And so my agreement with the law firm was that I said, I can't pay for it, and I don't want you taking my house. The public will support it. So right now, I'm $17,000 in the hole, and I'm just getting to the motion for summary judgment. So if you can help, I ask that you do, and I'll tell you where you can go. You can go to my website. You can help me through PayPal by using my email, or you can send it to the P.O. box. Also, share this information with other people. Most people don't even have an idea that this is going on to know whether they oppose it or not. And then I'm going to close there, and whatever time we have left, you guys are welcome to ask me questions. Sorry I went so long.
No, it's fine.
When you thought about the Obama and Coulter and the rest of them, they're big complaint is about Jesse Jackson, Sharp and the rest of them, is about the blacks having ID cards to vote. Well, is this not an ID card?
Okay, so here's the deal, because I've looked at this issue, and first thing I want to say is that identification and voter identification and biometric ID are really two different issues, because there is an argument to be made if there are a lot of people committing fraud in voting, you have a right to have your vote count. They don't have a right to steal it. So an argument can be made for identification upon voting. If there's enough instances of fraud, it's not necessarily an unreasonable thing. But biometric ID and ID are two different things. And so ID, as we commonly think about it, they go, oh yeah, you've got the card, and that picture looks like you, and okay. But biometrics is a whole other thing. So with biometrics, eventually, every time you're ID'd, whether you're showing your card or it's being done automatically without knowledge, there is a record register that basically gives a picture of your life. So does that answer your question?
No, because I can't believe that Coulter and Obama then would go along with this, especially the blacks, because they're the ones.
So are you saying you're surprised that they're supporting it?
Yes.
One of the things that Real ID was marketed as, with Real ID, you have to establish your citizenship to get a real. It's one of the part of the rules, and so people are like, well, this will help stop illegal immigration. What you see happening is that all the states, slowly but surely. In fact, I just heard about Colorado's one day. They're altering their laws so that they are making it legal for undocumented people to get a driver's license, and I'll tell you why. And if you think about it, our driver's license databases are a law enforcement database. They've never used it to troll through and put us in digital lineups until recently, but this is how they keep track of everybody. Why would you put all of the ordinary Americans in this law enforcement database to be trolled and to be used for law enforcement purposes, and let people who are here illegally not be tracked or surveilled? And so this is why they are allowing illegals or undocumented people get a driver's license, because they want everybody in the database. And so if you are surprised that they are kind of supporting it, you can't tell left from right anymore, can you? Everyone has to be enrolled. If you have a global identification system, everyone must be enrolled.
Why aren't they doing that to all the illegals coming across the border now? The ones that they have in the detention centers and things like that. And get some ones
They're taking their biometrics there too.
They are doing it.
Yeah.
So they know who they are.
Well, unless their breeder documents are
They know
fraudulent.
what they look like that.
Yeah.
They don't know who they are.
Yeah, the picture's always been valuable for, going, we're pretty good as humans, matching that up. But they want everyone in the database. It's a global system, and this is one of the things with my lawsuit, is that I'm not doing this just for me, one person, to get an exemption. If I get an exemption, there's a whole lot of people in my boat that if I get an exemption, they will get an exemption. And a global identification system does not work unless everyone or almost everyone's enrolled. And so it will have a positive downstream effect on everybody's rights and being able to opt out.
I know a missionary just came back from one of those countries.
India?
And he says, I asked him, in fact, last Saturday, about all this. He said he does not know where all these kids came from, because the places that they visited in their country, he didn't see any of this so-called mayhem and stuff like that that's going on. So,
He doesn't know where they come from?
They say they came from that country, but he knows it's a lie because they never saw it yet.
Well, they're going to be able to keep track of everybody real soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it possible, like someone like you get this lawsuit, to patent your biometrics so that
Like copyright it?
Well, copyright it, patent it, so that if they use it, facial recognition.
It's an interesting idea.
Right. I mean, just for one more leg to stand on.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about that. I like the idea. Like, you can't use my likeness without permission.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't ever thought of that.
And
No,
part,
Wendell went farther. I think he had a better idea than yours there.
What's that?
Pay me. Every time you want to run my biometrics, you scan me, you pay me $100.
You know what? If you're a capitalist, and I've pointed this out to people, all of this data that they are, take Common Core in the schools, for example, big part of school reform, education reform, is data collection. Why? Because the cronies, that data is valuable. We don't realize how valuable it is. In fact, they'll package it up and sell it back to us that they took from us for free. And so one way, if you don't care about privacy, you might look at this. They're stealing from you. They're stealing something of value from you. They use it for research. They use it for marketing. They use it for all kinds of stuff, and it's literally money.
so if you win the lawsuit, not only can you then be exempt and other people be exempt, but you can also retract your data, right? Is that part of it?
That is part of my lawsuit. I want a non-biometric driver's license, and I want the biometric data in the database has to come out. And here's the thing, when I'm talking to you about these state databases, everybody wants these state databases. The FBI has a program called Next Generation ID that collects 8 different kinds of biometrics, and the facial is a real important one of them for the reasons that you may have seen with that slide. And they already have access. This lawsuit is dated at least a year old. They already have agreements directly with 10 states to get direct access. It is intended for them to have access to all of it. And once the FBI has it, they share it internationally. So in other words, the cat is out of the bag. I don't have anything that leads me to think that Oklahoma, as of yet, has opened the barn door on those state databases. But once that barn door is open, global enrollment has occurred. It is permanent, and it is you cannot retract it. It's out there. It's gone. And so there's this sense of urgency with my lawsuit to establish a little foothold that maybe we have a right for them not to take the measurements of our very body and stick it in a database and use it to surveil and control us. I went to my lawyers at one point and I said, we've got to move full steam ahead. I started this lawsuit in 2011, and it's been very slow going because once that barn door is open, we are permanently globally enrolled. They cannot take it back. And so that's part of the urgency, is to stop those state databases from being opened up like that. We're in a race.
Here's something kind of neat.
What's that?
I'm retired Navy. I was stationed in Hawaii. This would be about 20 years ago. Because
Yeah.
my second child was born there, and she's 20. They came out with a new program for the military, and a lot of things are tested in Hawaii because Hawaii has all the military branches and it has a closed
Right.
system. And they came out with these cards, and on the back of the card it had a magnetic strip, it had the code thing, and again,
Right.
20 years ago.
Right.
It had a system on it where you could have your entire medical record,
Yes.
dental record. When you went to chow, you ran the card, and that just took it right out. Again, 20 years
Right.
ago. What that card was called?
What
It was the first ones were DOD. Mine.
I'm trying to think if I...
You'll know right
What
when I
was
say it. But mine's a DOD one, Department of Defense.
Yes.
Now, the sailor will have a Navy one, the Army guy will have.
Right.
Mine's an original. It's DOD, and it says right on it, the card is called the mark.
Oh, God.
M-A-R-C.
That's like the So Mark tattoo I was telling you about. I'm like,
It's
stop.
spelled M-A-R-C, but it's called the mark. The card is the mark card. I still have it.
You know what? I'm not even going to go there, but I can tell you so many things that
I
I've
was just stunned
uncovered
when I
where
went.
it's like they're waving it in our face. Like, ha, 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 what are you going to do? I mean, the So Mark tattoo, the first company, which has now subsumed all these other companies,
It's called
at first was called Visage. And when you look in the Bible and you look in Scripture and you get out, your concordance and you start looking at the meanings of everything, which I'm a nerd and I do, when they talk about the forehead, it is Visage, which was the name of the company, and facial recognition focuses on the area that is defined in the Bible as the forehead. It's the area above the veil, and it's the eyes and the forehead, and it's your visage.
You said that the Chinese and the Indians are already doing this. I find that hard to imagine because there's a whole bunch of them.
You want me to tell you what? You raised a really good point. It is hard to imagine because there's 1.6 billion people in India. There's a bunch of them, even more in China. And here's what's happening. This company that I told you that started out as Visage, it is now Morpho Trust in the United States. But Morpho Trust is a subsidiary of Safran, which is a global defense company, 30% owned by the French government. Boasts of its long partnership with Red China and Russia. And they are slowly getting very close to a global monopoly on biometrics. They have an effective monopoly on biometrics in the United States. And they are deeply involved in the India project. Nobody really knows that much about China. But the World Bank and the UN and the United States, everybody is throwing money at them for these projects. Because once they get India, and China's already done it, once they get India, they have the majority of the world's population, and they're going to go, oh, they hate us. We're really foot draggers compared to the rest of the world, and we're way too far along for my comfort. And so they will use that to go, they're doing it in Africa. Africa's not paying for it. The World Bank's paying for it. Safran is doing it. And, you know, so this is, they're going to look at us and go, India and China, they're whooping y'all's butts. What are you doing back in the Stone Age there?
Do you have a good answer for people who say, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, and as long as I'm not doing anything wrong, we don't have anything to worry about?
Yeah, I ask them to give me their passwords and rip their curtains off and throw their door open and run around naked. I mean, they're not doing anything wrong. What do you got to hide? Everybody has something to hide. It's our personal business. Secrets are a good thing. We all have secrets. I remember when I went to college and I thought I wanted to be a psychology major. And then I realized I have to sit around and listen to people blah, 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 over and over and over, who didn't want to do anything about their life, and I became a hairdresser instead. So one of the ways when you are, and we all do this, when we're dealing with people, one of the things we evaluate their stability and, you know, how fit they are mentally is by how they approach disclosure. If somebody comes and they tell you all their personal business when you first met them, you're like, oh, well, no. Okay? Or somebody that's very secretive that never shares anything, that's not really balanced either. And so that is literally a key sign of your psychological functioning and health. How we do disclosure, control of our personal information. It's a very reliable sign. And so we have the government coming in and taking that ability to control what we disclose and what we don't disclose away from us. We're all going to be cuckoo. I mean, we're not, that is a vital functioning of a healthy human being, to control disclosure. And we're having that taken away from us. So, you know, like I said, rip the curtain down, open up your door, give me your passwords, and run around naked. I mean, why? Those aren't, well, you're not doing anything bad. Well, it's your personal business. That's your personal business. I know, if I hear that, I don't think I even hear it anymore because I can't deal with it. I'm like, God help you. I mean, are you thinking? You know? They don't have a right to know our personal business. They don't have a right.
Plus, the people that get accosted in a parking lot somewhere, they're not against those cameras shining down on them and catching the person that gets them, you know, or inside of the store. So
they're not against them when what?
If they get accosted by somebody out in a parking lot or inside of the store, the only way they know who did it is they've got a camera.
But it doesn't stop the crime, and there's actually...
I realize that, but they're not against that camera if the person gets caught.
Right, it is. Surveillance is a deterrent. It is. That's how it works. That is the psychological functioning, whether we're talking no tech. You ever heard of the panopticon? It was an idea for a prison that was circular, with all of the cells on the outside circle, and a big tower, like at the time, Venetian blinds over the windows in the tower. There could be one person in there. There could be nobody in there. The prisoners didn't know. They were constantly illuminated and within sight of that tower at all times. And they never knew if anybody was actually watching them or not. So they had to internalize and they had to believe that they were always being watched. And so that is psychological power. And that is the basis on which all surveillance works. All of it. And it is a psychological fellow by the name of Jeremy Bentham, who was a utilitarian philosopher. And utilitarianism is as evil as communism or socialism. because it believes that the ends justifies the means, and whatever makes the most people happy is the best thing. And so this was Jeremy Bentham. He created the idea of the panopticon. You can see that idea in effect with open classrooms, with rotundas in hospitals where the nurses station in the middle and they kind of keep an eye out. But that sort of surveillance, they do. That's absolutely true. But I'm not the government's child. I watch my kids.
My wife worked at Walmart, and she said, nearly all the cameras inside of her. She said, what people don't know is there's not a camera on us.
There you go. So the cameras work the same whether they're actually on or not. And thank you for saying that, because I was going to bring that up to make my point. You're absolutely right. If you have a camera watching you, and you don't even realize it after it's happened several times, you will alter your behavior to conform to what is expected of you. We all do. That's the power of it. Does that work the same if the camera is not actually on? Yes, because you don't know. That is what I'm talking about. That is the foundation for all surveillance. And in certain instances, it may be justified, but to do it to everybody all the time, 24/7, down to their body, is evil, in my opinion.
One of the evil, I think Facebook, and when the NSA came out, people started, if you see what it does to people, where they get to where they no longer voice their concerns because they're afraid that they're going to be noticed, that's evil. That's evil. There is a price to be paid
For visibility.
for that type of
for
surveillance, so
Yep.
that you don't have to worry about someone accosting you or something. There is a huge price
Can you
to pay.
believe we
And most
voluntarily
Americans are
signed
not
up for
willing
that?
to pay for that.
Is it sick? I'm going to quit Facebook. I'm like, after that little experiment they did. No, but you're right. Like with me, the reason I'm on Facebook and the reason I stay on Facebook is so that I can connect with activists all over the world. I've got like 5,000 friends. I don't know 95% of them, but we share some issue in common, and I want to be connected with them. But I rarely venture out of my issue of e-cigarettes and biometrics or privacy, because I don't want 400 people taking issue with my opinion and it hurting, what I'm there for, which is the privacy biometrics issue and things like that. And so it's very inhibiting, isn't it? I mean, who wants it? If you voice an opinion, you're going to have any number of people come in and smacking you for it. If they smack me for privacy, we'll go. We'll go. I'm like, bring it. Okay, we'll do that. But I'm not willing to do that for a lot of stuff. I mean, it would just be endless nonsense.
Are you saying that when they take their picture of the driver's license office, that's it, to get your driver's license, they do it biometrics on their face at that
Yes,
time?
they are.
That's what you're saying?
They've been doing it for a while. I had a thyroid disorder, and I had gained 75 pounds and carried that for years. And then finally found out what was going on, and they put
Facial
it on.
recognition didn't work.
I went
Yeah.
in to get mine new and had never changed the weight on the card. So it's still
Right.
down to 125,
Right.
even though I was.
Mine's been the same since
And I
my career,
remember
yeah.
they took that picture and they looked at it and they came back. They went
It
and
didn't
talked to
match.
someone on the phone. And they came back and they said, "Have you had a weight change?" I said, "Yeah, I gained 5
Like, that's an impolite question. But yeah, you can go get, if you lose your driver's license, you can go to a DPS office, and you can get your driver's license replaced based on something you know, which is your personal information, without something you have, but also with something you are, which is your biometrics. So they'll take what you know, they will match your face and make sure that it matches mathematically, and they will give you another driver's license. So this is why I say your body is your ID. It really is.
The DNA, I think people are not aware of how advanced they've actually gotten with that. We had been doing our family genetics, and we had come to a point where we'd gotten to the period of the revolution, and there were a couple people in that area that we could have been. So we had taken my brother's DNA, and we mailed it in, and sure enough, they came back and they had us traced just like we knew, all the way down to that, and that is how we found out.
So you're
We
doing
were
your
connected.
genealogy, and there's a role for DNA in your
Because of
genealogy?
people that have
Based on
submitted-
government databases?
I don't know if it's government databases, but they have it. These ancestral sites have it because of people that have submitted their DNA. which we didn't think about
Okay,
it at the
so
time.
like
We
the
didn't think about
Mormons
it, but
have
they were
one
able
of the
to tell us
best
where we went.
genealogy databases with all the DNA, and they actually use it for research purposes. So,
Yep.
wow. Well, they've got something now called rapid DNA, where they can swab your cheek, get your DNA type in 90 minutes. Their goal is to get rapid DNA down to 5 minutes or less, and that will happen. It's just a matter of time. And this is part of why now the birth certificate issue is coming up. I've seen references in international documents saying, you know, the rapid DNA is getting really good. That's going to be a great, because you can type it, put it on there, right there. And I've seen documents from law enforcement going back to 2007 that said, you know, within 15 years you get pulled over, you're going to have your cheek swabbed, your DNA instantly typed. That will be the biometric used to identify you. Although the facial recognition, unless they start reading our brainwaves or something, gosh knows, will always have a big role for governments because of that. Don't need your corporation and can identify you from a distance. But the DNA, they're going to have everybody's DNA.
It's 50 years since I had any kids. Did they take your-
What? You want to go get
I'll
him?
go get him. It's
Okay,
15 already.
okay.
I'll be back.
Yeah, he's going
20,
to
30
pick up
minutes.
his child here.
Did they take your the baby's footprint and stuff like that when they were born? It's been, you know, 50 years since I had any kids, so I'm not sure how it goes anymore.
I think so.
It's still the same process it was then. The only thing that they've done to shore up the breeder documents is they now have the death and birth records digitized, and so they will kind of match those records up just to see if there's an obvious discrepancy. But until they fix the identity on the document, it will always be very vulnerable to fraud. And this is something they've known about. And I'm like, if you were going to start to fix an issue, wouldn't you start with the foundation? You know, one of the most common misconceptions is that biometrics proves you are who you say you are. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Your birth certificate is what we use to establish our identity. If you take Anna's biometrics and put it on Joe Blow's birth certificate, she'll be Joe Blow. And so that's a big weakness, and I think it's really interesting that now they're working backwards to fix that. And it'll be one fix after another until they get it on or in your body. And I'm not going
Which
there.
they already draw blood at childbirth, don't they?
The blood spots, yes, they do, and there's a big fight over that going on in some states. What was I reading the other day? Yeah, they were using it. They were sharing it with the military and private companies in Texas and doing all sorts of research on it. And
What are they going to do about the people that was born before, way back when, and they didn't do a birth certificate to? I give you an example.
that is one of the issues
I
that
give you-
people with Real ID are running into.
I give you an example of me. I didn't have a birth
Right,
certificate.
right.
And I turned 65 and came time to get Social Security. It took me 3 years to prove who I was.
When a state becomes Real ID compliant, people like you stand at the counter and cry. Women who've been married and they're older, they have to show a document trail showing where their name. These women are like, I got married in 1940. I don't have that document. And so literally, there are veterans and women in Florida, for instance, which is fully Real ID compliant, bawling. I've had calls from Florida, people going, help me, because they see I'm involved in it. Oh, it's awful. So it's really a lot of suffering, and then that's why they're wanting to get into this biometric birth certificate and stuff, and they'll just get it from the get-go.
Well, you sound like it's easy to get a birth certificate anymore. Like I say, it took me 3 years to get a birth certificate.
Well, you were trying to get
You're
a
not
real
criminal.
legal one.
Yeah,
It's easy to get a forgery.
Have all the other proof.
When they first passed Real ID, one of the things they suggested is that not to even try to include, I believe it was people born before 1935, because it was just too difficult and they're probably going to die soon and we wouldn't have to worry about it, because that's a known issue. With people that are older, getting these documents is very, very difficult in establishing even that paper trail. It is a big problem. And there are a lot of people suffering in Real ID compliance state.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you.
I'm not rushing anybody off. You can all sit down and talk. I just want to, if
Yep.
you have to go, go.
Thank you guys for
Thank you.
listening, and I appreciate you.